Good morning. How are you all today? Blessings to you and your families. Thank you for visiting with us again, and welcome to Bible class with Andre and Betty. We're continuing our studies today from the book of Judges, and today we're in the 8th chapter. We're looking at the connection between jealousy and pride among the tribes of Israel. And so how jealousy is an offspring of pride. We'll see this in the first several verses of this chapter. So we're in today's lesson, we're seeing the jealousy of Ephraim, and then we'll be looking at the events leading to Gideon's death. Chapter 8, verse 1. And the men of Ephraim said unto Gideon, Why hast thou served us thus, that thou calledest us not, when thou wentest to fight with the Midianites? And they did chid with him sharply. They argued with him sharply. They scolded him because they're complaining that he did not call them to the battlefield. But God chose the army that Gideon fought with, those 300 men. But they're coming against Gideon to ask him the question. Verse 2. And he said unto them, Gideon said unto them, What have I done now in comparison of you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? And he's talking about what happened in Judges chapter 7, verses 24 and 25, how Ephraim is the one who killed the princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb. And he's saying, what you did is much greater than what I did. And that exhibits, and you see their response to let you know that that pride had caused them to be jealous of what had happened with Gideon and the 300 soldiers. So verse 3 says, God had delivered into your hand the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. And what was I able to do in comparison of you? Look at this. Then their anger was abated toward him when he had said that. So they felt better about themselves after Gideon told them that they had done more than he had done. And that's pride, to want yourself to be greater than everybody else. Verse 4. And Gideon came to Jordan and passed over, he and the 300 men that were with him, faint, yet pursuing them, still pursuing the Midianites. Verse 5. And he said unto the men of Succoth, Give, I pray you, loaves of bread unto the people that follow me, for they be faint, and I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian. Now Oreb and Zeb were princes, but Zebah and Zalmunna are kings of Midian. Verse 6. And the princes of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thine army? And Gideon said in verse 7, Therefore, when the Lord had delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into mine hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And you'll see this happen in verses 15 and 16, that he will follow through on this threat to the men of Succoth. 8. And he went up thence to Penuel, and spake unto them likewise. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered him. And he spake in verse 9 also unto the men of Penuel, saying, when I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. And that occurred in verse 17 of this chapter. Verse 10. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor, and their host or their army with them about 15,000 men, all that were left of all the hosts of the children of the east. For there fell 120,000 men that drew the sword. So this is a total of 135,000 men that were defeated by Gideon and the 300 men with him. Verse 11. And Gideon went up by the way of them that dwell in tents on the east of Noah and Jogbehah, and smote the host, for the host was secure. They felt secure. Verse 12. And when Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued after them and took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and disorganized all the host of his army. And Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle before the sun was up, and caught a young man of the men of Succoth, and inquired of him. And as he described unto him the princes of Succoth, the elders thereof, even 70 men. Verse 15. And he came unto the men of Succoth and said, behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom you did upbraid me, saying, are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thy men that are weary of faint. And so here I am. I told you I was coming back and I was going to do this to you all, so I'm fulfilling my promise. Verse 16. And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. And verse 17 is to the men of Penuel. And he beat down the tower of Penuel and slew the men of the city. And so that's the fulfillment to them. Verse 18. Then said he to Zebah and Zalmunna, what manner of men were they whom ye slew at Tabor? And they answered, as thou art, so were they. Each one resembled the children of a king. And their resemblance is, they saw them as being the king's children, because of their character and the way they presented themselves. And he said, and Gideon said in verse 19, they were my brethren, even the sons of my mother. As the Lord liveth, if you had saved them alive, I would not slay you. If you had kept those men alive, I would not kill you. Verse 20. And he said, Gideon said unto Jether, his firstborn, up and slay them, kill them. But the youth drew not his sword, for he feared, because he was yet a youth. He was still a little boy. 21. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, rise thou and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna, and took away the ornaments or the chains that were on their camels' necks. And you'll see this word ornament translated into chains in verse 26. Verse 22. Then the men of Israel said unto Gideon, Rule thou over us, both you and your son's son also. They wanted to make him and his family a dynasty, that a family affair where Gideon, his son, and his descendants would be the ones to rule over Israel. They said, And thy son's son also, for thou hast delivered us from the hand of Midian. And this shows the humility of Gideon in verse 23. And Gideon said unto them, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. And after the book of Judges comes the book of Ruth. And from the book of Ruth, then we go into 1st and 2nd Samuel. And this will be when the people ask for a king, because God is their king up to that point. But when they get into the land, they're going to ask that a king rule over them, and God will let Samuel appoint King Saul. But Gideon understand in the days of the judges that the Lord Jehovah shall rule over you. Verse 24. And Gideon said unto them, I would desire a request of you, that you would give me every man the earrings of his prey. Parentheses, for they had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites, so they were descendants of Ishmael. Verse 25. And they answered, We will willingly give them. And they spread a garment, and did cast therein every man the earrings of his prey. Verse 26, and the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides ornaments and collars and purple raiment that was on the kings of Midian, and beside the chains or the ornaments of verse 21 that were about the camels' necks. So the ornaments are identified as chains in this verse 26. Verse 27, and Gideon made an ephod thereof and put it in his city, even in Ophrah. And all Israel went thither a-whoring after it, worshiping this item that Gideon had made. So all Israel went there a-whoring after it, which thing became a snare unto Gideon and to his house. So this thing that Gideon did displeased the Lord, and it's going to affect his descendants in a specific way that we'll see in the next chapter. Verse 28. Thus was Midian subdued before the children of Israel, so that they lifted up their heads no more. And the country was in quietness 40 years in the days of Gideon. So they had rest 40 years under the leadership of Gideon. Verse 29. And Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. Now, Jerubbaal is Gideon. So you can say Gideon, the son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. Verse 30. And Gideon had 70 sons of his body begotten, For he had many wives, so he had 70 children, sons. Verse 31. And his concubine that was in Shechem, she also bare him a son whose name he called Abimelech. And this is going to be an interesting character in the next chapter or two. Verse 32. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died in a good old age and was buried in the sepulchre of Joash his father in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. Verse 33, another apostasy of the children of Israel after Gideon died, then they're going to do evil again in sight of the Lord. Verse 33, and it came to pass as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel turned again and went a whoring after Balaam, and made Baal-berith their god. So they are turned again to idol worship. Verse 34. And the children of Israel remembered not the Lord their God, who had delivered them out of the hands of all their enemies on every side. Verse 35. Neither showed they kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, namely Gideon, according to all the goodness which he had showed unto Israel. So it's a sad thing when we pray and we ask God to do things for us, and when it happens, we act like we did it ourselves. We're not even thankful, and we don't even say thank you and try to grow closer to the Lord. When we do that, that displeases God. But at the same time, he's a God of mercy and forgiveness. And if we're born again, he does not throw us away. But we need to keep in mind to always be thankful for the bridge that brought us over, because we may have to go back over that bridge and it may not be there. So thank you all for listening and for sharing with us. We're in the Thanksgiving holiday, so you all have a blessed Thanksgiving time, and we'll see you all next week. And have a great day and a great week. Bye.